thanks for finally coming on the show, Larch. You're pretty well known in this climate movement. Why don't you start by telling us like what you've been up to for the last few years, because you've done quite a lot, really, haven't you?
Thanks. Yeah, you've been very patient tracking me down. Well, last few years, I mean, I guess 1985 was when I started with this whole journey. I did a school project on acid rain when I was 13 years old at school, and it was so clear to me, half the forest dead with acid rain, half the forest still alive. Those images were so visual and so obvious that I just started asking questions and looking at why that is and what we're doing about it. And yes, it's been a journey since then. 1993 was a big point of that, where I learned that climate crisis was the single biggest issue that trumped everything else.
Quite a long time ago then.
Yeah, so 1993 was when it really like stepped up a notch for me. It's like, okay, I was concerned about stuff before then. At that point it was like, oh, this is an existential threat. This is a thing that trumps it all. This is the work of my life. This is the work of our lives. So, yeah. And then I took a year out of my masters to live on a road protest camp not long after learning that information. And for me, yeah, the anti-roads movement was very much about climate and trying to do something meaningful around climate, commensurate with the challenge. Most people I was working with at the time in the early 90s, they were there because they didn't like roads, didn't like cars, trying to protect those trees. Mm-hmm. But for me, it was always about the big picture, about climate.
So what kind of things were you doing back in the 90s?
Well, so we occupied the sites of roads. So the UK government had under Thatcher had started a £23 billion road building programme, the biggest road building scheme since the Romans. And we managed to get it stopped, got it cancelled. And there was a leaked kind of internal civil service kind of memo where they said it was the road protests that had contributed to that decision. So sort of information you never get, because they always try and deny that it's us that's caused that change in policy.
They don't want to inspire more people to do the same thing, do they?
No, exactly. So that was amazing. We built tree houses and walkwayed between them. We had proper Ewok village. So one camp that I lived on and helped set up and was called Stanworth Valley on the No M65 campaign, which I co-founded. And we had 40 tree houses all walkwayed up, so you could get from everyone without touching the ground from one side of the wood to the other.
That sounds incredible.
It was amazing. Yeah, it was like beautiful. It was temperate rainforest. So we lived in temperate rainforest, the most beautiful place. And then, got all to learn all these skills. I mean, that was like 94 to 95. So, and it was temperate rainforest, so it was seriously wet. So it was a quag. We called it the quag, and it had its own kind of character, and it was a part of the whole thing. So a mate of mine built a treehouse next to mine because he was inspired and got involved, and at one point he forgot to clip I think it was a mate of his forgot to clip in before abseiling down, and he fell, and it was a lowish. My treehouse was 80 foot up, but his was lower. It's like 25-30 feet up, and so it wasn't such a big fall, and the quag saved him because Scouse Martin was super sociable. The bottom of his treehouse was like mega quaggy because loads of people were going to visit him all the time because he'd cook for them and put music on and anyway, so that saved him. He had a bad back, but it saved him because he landed in this like massive mud. Anyway, I would like traipse in my wellies through the woods, having done a full day's work like building treehouse. I helped build 20 treehouses. And halfway through that camp, I realised, because my dad's like so mega practical, come from a like big working class family, and I was like always the boffin in my family, and so I got this label of he's intelligent, but he's not very practical. And after like everyone was coming to me to teach them how to build a treehouse, and I would say, well, I'll help you and I'll show you and get you started, but I ain't doing it all for you because like there's only so many hours in the day. I'm not building everyone's treehouse for them, and it's much better if they learn how to do it. So I helped build 20 treehouses, and at some point I was like, I'm no longer able to maintain that myth that I'm not practical. Like, we're all practical if we choose to apply ourselves. Mm-hmm. So that was really empowering, the whole thing. And anyway, I'd traipse at night then, having done a full day's shift. I'd traipse at night through the quag to the phone box back in the day when you didn't have mobile phones. You wanted to make a phone call, you go and use the phone box, and that was my office. And I'd be doing press releases and interviews on the phone from the phone box, and getting them to call me back whenever I could to save the money. So that was pretty amazing experience. Yeah.
So you've been doing it for quite a long time. You're 93. That's when I was born. So I was literally a baby, you know. So, yeah. God. Do you know a lot of people from that time who have stayed in the movement like since?
So a lot of them drifted off, and like when Extinction Rebellion first came along, I was like, where are they? You know, this is on the go, guys. This is really happening now. This is what I've been waiting for. Where are you all? And you know, 5 years later, because we've been going another 5 years now, some of them are coming out of the woodwork, which is great. So yeah, some of them are, but some of them, you know, they've got kids or they've, you know, a whole range of different stories. But yeah, no, some of them are definitely active and involved, and that's always really lovely, kind of connecting with them. I'd definitely like to connect with more of them and see if we can get more of them working with us.
Did you have anything to do with the start of Extinction Rebellion?
Yeah, so I came across Extinction Rebellion August 20. Maybe it's July or August. No, I think it was August. August 2018 was the day after my birthday. So I'd been up all night. I met Jamie Kelsey-Fry for the first time. We were partying together on my birthday. I was dancing naked to this band because it was that kind of festival where you just like randomly, it was so hot in this tent and it was a really cool band. And everyone that was up for it just got naked and we were dancing together. And then, so I was like, I was there at this festival with 3 hats on, running stalls and giving workshops. And that morning I was like, okay, I'm sort of hungover and waking up bleary-eyed. What am I going to do? I hadn't even had breakfast yet. And I saw this thing, which was the heading for extinction and what to do about it. I was like, that's where I got to go. And it was already halfway through. I just dropped everything, didn't have breakfast, just went there because like that's where I need to be. And it was like a really shit talk. It was like someone reading from a script in a really not very good at reading, but I could tell it was like, this is the movement I've been waiting for 25 years. And so that was amazing. It was like, you know, I can remember it so crystal clear. It was one of those moments. Like
it got excited.
Yeah, it was just like this, you know. And I chatted to the people afterwards, and actually a week later, I then took that talk and co-gave it at another festival that I'd already arranged to do, you know, because I was wearing all these different hats. I'd set up a charity and I was a manager of this charity and working as a director of a social enterprise and doing all this stuff and running a direct action campaign on fracking and stuff. So I was doing all these other things. So I'd already gotten into this other festival, Sunrise Festival it was. And so I spoke to this guy, Robin Boardman, who's one of the founders of Extinction Rebellion. And I said, you know, so are you going to be at Sunrise Festival? Because I'm going to be there. And he's like, oh, we were going to be, but it fell through. And I'm like, well, I can get us there. So Robin and I then worked together, and we gave the talk together. So a week after attending my first talk, I was like helping give it. And so then I was just in. First of all, I was doing it at weekends and evenings, giving like talks and stuff, and then teaching people how to give the talk. And then I took my week's annual leave, 2 weeks annual. My annual leave for that year I took in the build up to the big thing that we were building up to, which was October 31st. We sort of had our declaration that we were like saying to the government, we are, you know, in rebellion to you, and you've got, you know, 2 weeks to do something, or we're going to start taking action. So I was working in the office full time, and that led up. We did the 5 bridges. We blocked 5 bridges, and I was coordinating one of the bridges, the take and everything. And I was coordinating the sign-ups for all 5 bridges to make sure we were getting new people on board. So I threw myself right in. And actually, what happened there was another life-changing little turn. I mean, my life has been so guided by, like, when living on the road camp, I was doing my masters. And I signed on to keep, you know, and basically that funded all the rope for the whole walkways, was because you could, you know, everything else we skipped and got for free. You had to buy rope new. You couldn't do that. So that came from me signing on. But to keep the dole happy one time, I applied for a job, which was like, oh, well, it would be my dream job, but forgot all about it. And instead of being at Glastonbury and not even hearing about it. I'd gone to Glastonbury and I'd got like all of my mates from the protest camp into Glastonbury on a ticket where we built a treehouse as a display to help highlight the anti-roads movement. But Glastonbury was like my first time. It was like every day that got closer to the festival, it was just got more and more full on, and people sort of ripping each other off. And it summarised it for me when we were there on the main drag building this treehouse, and a woman sped up to us, screeched to a halt, spewing dust in our face, and said, "Take these," and tried to thrust dust masks at us. And me and my mate, who like just looked at each other flabbergasted, he was speechless. I managed to get it together enough to say, well, maybe if you drove a bit more slowly, we might not need them. And she said, "Haven't got time," threw them at us and sped off, spewing dust in our face. And for me, it was like, I've just spent a year protesting against roads and cars. I've just been through the most traumatic eviction ever, where I saw friends nearly killed and lost the trees and everything, community that I love. I'm not going to stay here being treated like that. So at that point, we'd got the treehouse pretty much built, and I just needed to make sure people were going to manage it okay. So me and my mate then went to a new protest camp against open cast mining in Swansea. And then once we were there, and again, I'd built a treehouse, and then I rang my mate to say, "Are you going to be there?" So that there was someone responsible with the tree. And he said, "Oh, your tutor's just rung, by the way." I'm like, "What tutor? I haven't got a tutor." And it was because I'd applied for this job, forgot about it. Instead of being at Glastonbury, not hearing about it, I just randomly was down the road from Swansea because we got this open cast protest site. And so a local put me up for the night, gave me clothes, put me on the right bus, and I went to Swansea and got the job. So that's like clearly being guided by the universe, you know. So then I ended up becoming an academic. If it wasn't for that, I probably wouldn't have done that, you know. Ended up doing a PhD, blah, blah, blah.
Does that come from that job then? Yeah,
so that job was a part-time tutor, to be a part-time tutor and to have a fully funded PhD, which was the experience on the road camp shifted my focus. I was doing an academic critique of the Trans-European Road Network, and had all my notes for that in my treehouse, but whilst living on the protest camp, I was like, I actually want to understand how to live like this, but in a way that doesn't get trashed at the end of the time because you get evicted by the state, you know. So that was the focus of my academic research.
I just want to ask you a question. So you said about the worst eviction you've ever experienced. Can you tell us a bit about what happened there and what that was like?
Yeah, so prior to that eviction, every tree eviction had involved a cherry picker, like a hydraulic raised platform where they come and get you out of the tree in that way. This was a really steep-sided woodland valley, and it was like temperate rainforest, so it was super quaggy and wet. So they couldn't get cherry pickers in. So we thought they might have to siege us out. So I had got, like they called it my soya wall. I'd got a wall of soy milk. I'd just got so much supplies up in my treehouse, hoping for a siege, and I would last months. We'd all last a long time. But when they did it was the first time they ever used climbers to get us out the trees, and the chainsaw guys were just so dangerous. So they would be like, literally, we'd be in the trees defending, they're all walkwayed up, and I saw trees dropped, like crashing through walkways, crashing like near with people with tree houses, like in their tree house, in the tree, you know. It was really, really, terrifying. And it was the longest eviction in post-war European history at that point.
Did you get any footage of it?
There is footage out there, yeah. Oh, well, we didn't get it because we didn't have mobile phones. Or, you know, there was an outfit called Small World, and they used to go and film, and then every month or so they'd come up with the latest update of the news, and it would be by video cassette, and then we'd all get together and watch them, you know. So they had footage because they were there in the trees filming. Yeah.
That sounds unbelievably savage. Like someone could have easily been killed, you know, if a tree had just fallen the wrong way.
Yeah.
But I'm not surprised, really. You know, like not surprised at all. The power of money, you know, trumps a lot of things.
Yeah.
So, you know, when you joined, you've done quite a lot of things. Like you probably struggled to get it all into one episode. It's like, can we just get like a bit of a rundown, like a list, like fire off some list of things you've done? Like when I do this to people, I say like, you know, I've sat in roads, I've closed the port of Dover, I've dug tunnels under roads, you know, I've broken into oil terminals, I've done this. Well,
okay, well my first sort of high level so In 1992, we had a joint action. Oh, well, I helped set about Earth First in the UK in the 90s. So I think it was 92. Earth First came, and we hosted it in Manchester. As a student, I co-founded Lloyd's and Midland Boycott, which was a targeted campaign on the issue of third world debt, as we called it at the time. That was before I learned that climate change was the issue that trumped everything. So that was in the early 90s. So that was a big thing. We were like locking ourselves onto banks to put pressure on the banks, going and doing AGM actions, blagging in without a share, or some of us had shares, wearing suits and then getting kicked out, trying to get the pressure on the banks to drop their debt. Then we set up Earth First, and we did this amazing action on the Liverpool docks where we were blocking the rainforest timber being imported, and the dockers were with us. We had this brilliant kind of meetings with the dockers, and because they'd got like a real radical culture within the dockers, they've had to really fight for their rights, and they're a real strong working class community. So that was brilliant. And then I just living on the road protest camps. That ended up morphing into Reclaim the Streets. So we organised loads of free parties and Reclaim the Streets. Back in the day, in the 90s, the free parties and the rave scene and the protest scene, it was all part of the same thing. And the Criminal Justice Act, which is the only thing until recently that I'd ever been convicted for, is like the current legislation they've just put in, it was the anti-protest thing. It was banning some weird definition of the continuous repetition of beats or something like that, which is basically trying to define rave music and banning it.
What?
Yeah, it's really mad.
How do you ban a genre of music? That's
what they're trying to do it now with grime, aren't they? But
what are they? I've not heard anything about this.
Yeah, well, on social media and stuff, on some of the YouTube channels. Anyway, music is often if good music is revolutionary and radical, and of course they'll repress it, So that was definitely it was all combined in back in the 90s with the music and the free party scene. So Reclaim the Streets was part of that, in the sense it was like the anti-roads movement. We were against the roads. Reclaim the Streets was like, this is the positive agenda we want to be for. We want to reclaim the streets for people. It's about community and connecting and planting up gardens with food and stuff. So that was brilliant. And then I did some anti-aviation stuff. I was part of the Manchester Airport No Expansion. That was my first time down a tunnel.
Really?
It was a really bad experience.
Oh my God! Do you want to tell us about this tunnel experience then? How did you get into tunnelling?
I mean, Manchester Airport. There's a whole little thing. I mean, we won't get on if we're talking about that, which I would like to do. We won't probably get on so much to the more recent stuff, but I think we should just cover that, and we'll get as far as we get today. And we
just go with it. Just go with the flow.
Because I really want to share this. Right? So, the anti-roads movement was brilliant. It was like really strong. People were all of these different camps happening at the same time, so people could go from one camp to the other and get a different vibe. And then that kind of culminated with Newbury. Newbury was like the pinnacle of the anti-roads movement. We'd already won by then, in that we'd already stopped the £23 billion road building programme. They cancelled that in 95. Newbury was 96, I think. No single road, once they'd started it, was stopped. But the £23 billion road building programme was stopped. So Newbury was amazing. There was like 20 camps or more. There was like vegan camps. There was just like every theme you can imagine. Every form of alternative society was there in these different camps. They'd all got their own vibe, and that was amazing. So I was there for the rickety bridge eviction at Newbury, and that was incredible. That was one of these opportunities where there was the Moisel's world snail. It was this really protected, really rare snail in this like water meadow, like beautiful stream, and because of that they couldn't just come in. And what we should have done was have everyone stopping them getting over the river, and we could have stopped them. But what everyone did was, as soon as they saw the bailiffs come, nearly everyone just gets up their tree, and it's like there's me and a few other, just 2 or 3 others trying to stop, because they had to somehow get over that river, and we could have stopped them. We could have pulled their ladders over or put them in the water or whatever, So that was frustrating. There's a lot of these, for me, the direct action. You see these opportunities and they often sort of slip through your fingers, and you think, oh, if only, But nonetheless, Rickety Bridge eviction was quite amazing. It was quite full on. There was we were much more accomplished at sort of countering the climbers at that point. So when they would try and climb the tree, we'd drop down and stop them climbing.
How?
Just by taking up the space and we're climbing. Don't come up, don't climb, don't come into my space. I'm already here, and being on the walkways and, them not being able to cut it because you're on the walkways and stuff. And, the various things, people jumping onto cherry pickers and locking onto the cherry picker, and that takes the cherry picker out, just a whole lot. Like Newbury got really advanced. They went and locked on and locked down and shut the security compound, so the security guards couldn't come out for the day. They couldn't stop any work if they can't get the security out.
Brilliant.
So there's loads of creative stuff they were doing like that. So that was Newbury, and then after that was Manchester Airport. Manchester Airport, I was at that point obviously doing my PhD, and I remember I was giving a presentation at Gruggennog in mid-Wales. The eviction had started. I had to give this presentation, and then I hitched, because back in the 90s everyone was hitching, always between protest camps. So I hitched from Gruggennog in mid-Wales to Manchester Airport, and the police cordon was, and by the way, at Stanworth, the camp I lived on for a long time, one of my best mates, at Lancaster Uni, he took a year out of his undergrad degree, and I took a year out of my master's, and the two of us held that camp. He was already a really good climber, so he taught me how to build treehouses, and he helped me build my treehouse that I then lived in for 8 months at Stanworth Valley. So I was pretty much a novice, but after building that treehouse, of course, then as I said, I ended up helping build 20 treehouses at Stanworth, and building treehouses at Cellar, and suddenly I ended up building one at Glastonbury. Suddenly I've got all this experience. So then when we come to Manchester Airport, it's like the roles have flipped, and I'm helping him build his treehouse, and I'm quite good at building by that point, and we've learned the tricks, and so it was cool. That treehouse was like the most amazing part of that camp in a way. It was called the Battlestar Galactica, and it got this big collar, so the climbers couldn't climb up because they couldn't get around this collar, and so then the treehouse was above that. So they had to get a cherry picker in, but they couldn't get a cherry picker in because we'd built tunnels to stop where the cherry picker could come in.
I like that.
So it was like really perfect, again. But then, and so I've hitched from Gruggennog, got to Manchester. The police cordon's in, that the eviction's happening, and I managed to kind of creep in over the police lines, and my penknife, I held it around my neck with a prusik cord, and I managed to improvise and use a bootlace as my foot prusik cord, because if that snapped, the proper prusik cord would still hold me. And I managed to climb up this tree outside of the police lines, so they couldn't see me, and did it, but I had to do it pretty carefully and stealthily. Yeah. Managed to do it with my prusik cord from my penknife and my bootlace as a prusik cord, and climbed up the rope. And then once I'm in the tree, I'm safe, and I climb across, and I think I'm probably using the prusik cord as my safety line to get across the walkways and get in and join my mates in Battlestar Galactica. And then there was seven of us there for the eviction. I know we were a really crack team. We really had worked together a lot, and really, really brilliant. So we were the last treehouse to get evicted. But then, as they always fucking do, like you say, money talks. So they pushed the limits of safety, and they got the cherry picker in between the tunnels. So it did risk, they shouldn't really have done it. It did risk people's lives, but they managed not to collapse the tunnels. And so it was clear to us so we were like 3 or 4 days up there into this eviction. It was clear to us the next day they're going to be able to get us out, because they've cleared the path. The cherry picker's going to be there. I think it was even parked up. So then we had a little chat, the 7 of us, and 4 chose to leave because they knew, the next day it's out, and 3 of us chose to stay and said, well, yeah, we're going to stay, we're going to get arrested, but we'll use the court case then to carry on the campaign. And 3 of us stayed, we self-represented, and we pled not guilty. And the judge said, look, he basically had massive sympathy. We were young, like students, we had massive sympathy for us, but had to find us guilty. And we said, well, that's fair enough, but we're not going to pay any fines, because, so you have to send us to prison, because that's what we just agreed. We were all just going to push it to the limit. And he's like, well, I'm not sending you to prison. So it was a kind of standoff. Never paid the fines, never went to prison.
Like bailiffs come after you?
No, I mean, back in the day, how are they going to track you down? I mean, we were, NFA or the treehouse that I was living in had gone or whatever. There was no tech in those days, no tracing around. So that was and I was never going to pay it. And I think, yeah, I mean, that's all that actually with those kind of fines, all that can happen is they send a bailiffs in. But I haven't got any assets to seize that are worth anything, even if they could find out where I was living, So anyway, that was cool. Yeah, it was really dramatic, really fun, like climbing in and past enemy lines,
and it's real good stories.
Yeah, and then choosing to stay and choosing to fight to get it was so empowering. Choosing to get arrested. My first arrest was really disempowering because I wasn't prepared for it.
Mm-hmm.
But that was my second arrest and my first conviction. But I was like, fucking bring it on. I don't, I'm willing to be accountable for that. I'm willing to stand up for that. And that conviction was under that Criminal Justice Act that I mentioned as. Oh no, that one was before the act was somehow used. They did it for obstructing the sheriff in the execution of his duty, like this ancient law, like medieval, not Sheriff of Nottingham sort
Can I
of
ask about the tunnels? So
yeah,
you've got quite a lot of experience with tunnelling, haven't you?
I do now.
With Euston and things like that.
Yeah.
So one thing we've not had on this podcast yet is people explain. Well, I've tried giving it a bit of a go, but the tunnels, for example, are usually about this wide and about this high off the ground, and you're on all fours crawling along, digging and getting a bucket going past you. Like, how much time have you spent living in tunnels?
Well, the longest one was 27 days under Euston Square Gardens.
Fuck! That's
various bits of time other than that. But back to Manchester Airport, my first experience of a tunnel. I'm very curious, adventurous. I'm always like, exploring. What's this? So there was a tunnel there. And I don't know why. Anyway, no one was around, and I just thought, I'll have a look in this tunnel, explore it, see what it's about. And I hadn't dug it; someone else had, and it felt. I'm claustrophobic, so I got in this tunnel, and I just had a massive claustrophobic attack, and it was really horrific. I thought I was going to die. How like it was like really felt unsafe. It was like really tight, really weird stuff that it was shored with, if anything, and it was like. I got in, it's like, how the fuck am I getting out? I'm not getting out of here. How the fuck, So eventually I managed to calm myself down enough to get out. When I got out, and I was like, I'm in the woods, I'm in the open air, I'm free. I was like, such relief. I'm like, I'm never doing that again. Mm-hmm. I'm a climber, I'm not a tunneler. And that's what I said then for 25 years, until I met Scotty. And on the HS2 protection camps. And I've always loved digging. I've always loved digging as a kid on the beach. I wouldn't just dig a hole. I'd dig a massive crater that 5 of us could stand in and be buried up to the neck, sort of thing. And I've worked on allotments. I've always, when I was 11, I started clearing my neighbours' snow off their front gardens off their path for money. So I've always loved digging. So there's a kind of natural fit there. And I found if you dig the tunnel yourself from the start, break ground yourself, and you see every step of the way, it's much, much easier. And if you just, like you just said, make it that little bit bigger, right? You can fit in something like that or even like that, but it's like, for me, it's just really stressful.
It makes a big difference.
Yeah, huge. And it doesn't make it, like, there's all that macho thing of like, make it really tight and small and it'll stop the bailiffs getting you, it'll slow them down. It's like, it doesn't, it's just not worth it. It's like just a good solid tunnel that's safe and comfortable. The fact that it's a tunnel is the tactical advantage. Whether you're going to make it tighter or not isn't going to make any difference. Having some decent doors, having enough people, those are the key things.
I missed out on tunnel actions. I was going to be one of the tunnellers for Just Up Oil, but I went to prison. So yeah, I was seriously like getting mentally prepared. I wanted to break the UK record for the longest tunnel occupation, but obviously that didn't happen. But
it's really gutty. We're saying about opportunities slipping through our fingers. You being so trained up, being really good physical and good at carpentry and building and all of that, and then being in prison, that was a major missed opportunity. It's really, really gutting because you and there's just 2 or 3 things that went like that. We lost you and a couple of others, and it's like what could have been amazing just didn't quite achieve its potential.
Yeah, and it's a shame we've dropped them now because I feel like the tunnels had a lot of advantages. But there is one thing about the tunnels that I've heard repeated off from several different people about the safeguarding of sending people down a tunnel. There was I've heard a couple of complaints about that. Well, one of the things that bothered me about the tunnelling is I'm not going to name names, but a couple of the people who were giving the training were boasting about how they made the tunnel with no shoring and how it was okay. And I remember just like going in on them like that's not okay to tell new people about that. Anyway,
it depends on the material, you know. The first tunnel that Scotty taught me how to dig with was chalk. It was and again I've dug in different types of chalk, you know, and some chalk you would want to shore it, but this chalk was really solid. It was totally safe, you know. So it really depends on the material, you know. But yeah, I mean, shoring is always worth shoring. It's great having shoring because then you've got stuff to lock onto. You can build your shelves. It's like, why not put shoring in? You know, you might as well. It's good.
A question I want to ask you then. So, the 27 days you spent living in a tunnel. God, you can only imagine. Like, what was that like? I mean, how? For one, you're not gonna. How do you wash yourself in the? Like, do you have like a little bit of water and you can wash yourself, or did you just like rough it for 27 days? You must have done. Your skin must have been black. Well, you know, like
no. You got to remember, I've been like before that tunnel. I was 21 days up a tree in Parliament Square without coming down. Before that was 9 days up a tree in Crackley Wood. That was the longest. You know, we had the eviction at Stanhope, but then in Crackley at the start of COVID, we had a 9-day tree eviction that was up. We thought they were coming in 3 to 4 days later. They broke the rules and came in early, so we weren't prepared. We didn't have all the stuff with us. So I've done a few evictions and been in a few situations. So I have a little routine. I just I wash with instead of a flannel, and I'm really minimising on water use. I wash with a hanky rather than flannel because it's less water, and I dry with another hanky. And I wash in a little bowl. It's like it's all I need. But the others just use wet wipes. But it's like for me, it's like that's my standard. Is I want to be able to wash in a bit of water. I feel so good. And so yeah, every day I would have a little wash. It's my routine. I wash like a bit of undies or whatever, and I wash myself. And I carried on doing that in the tunnel.
I take it you had a bucket in there as well.
We had all sorts of things, you know. Yeah, little bucket, like large peanut butter bucket type thing, with a compost bag in there. You know, that was easy. What was I going to say? Something about tunnel.
So the people you was in, you must have like. How do you occupy yourselves? Like playing cards or like what? Like how did you keep yourself entertained? Like you got to imagine, guys. Imagine being in a tiny little tunnel with no sunlight, you know, like dirty and in a tight space for 27 days. Like, how did you occupy yourself?
Like, you're defending your home from bailiffs. That's like full-time job. It's like everything takes longer down there. Moving around takes longer. Feeding yourself takes longer. Washing yourself takes longer. Going to the loo takes longer. And then you've got you're still trying to improve the shoring, extend the tunnel. It's like I got about the last night I just was on my own, which was a big mistake. But like, you know, you're working, you're working a lot. You're lucky if you get 6 hours sleep. Because it's just a lot of work. So there was no, like, I had a really good book that I read, and I read a little bit of that with a couple of us. It was like Martin Luther King biography. But yeah, I literally read, and anyway, I read a couple of chapters in 27 days. That's how busy I was.
Mm-hmm. I had so many plans for my tunnel. Like I was going to build doors and all kinds of things. I was going to put a sign on. I was going to, me and my friend were planning to put some fake shoring pieces in, and then threaten the police to knock them out if they started coming in, so we could like knock out the shoring that wasn't actually holding anything, and so the police could see us knocking down shoring. I had so many ideas, like what I was going to build. Like I was going to build a door, and then have the door being part of the structure of the tunnel. So if they try and break the door, they compromise the structure of the tunnel. Like there's loads of things you can do. That was one of the actions I was looking forward to most. So I was a bit gutted as well when I got to prison. I was like, shit, I was supposed to be a tunneler.
Yeah. Oh well. Discipline, isn't it? We live and learn. So the start of that eviction was so yeah, I knew that tunnel was always going to be the biggest one because it was at Euston Square Gardens. We'd done an action there in May, and suddenly it got loads of publicity and attention, whereas stuff we'd done, which was much better actions elsewhere, got ignored. And so I was like, right, this is it. So I knew from that point I was going to set up a camp at Euston Square Gardens. I was just trying to get the people together to do it. And so it took, a few months of like going around chatting to people. It's like, yeah, okay, I've got a team of people. They're going to hold the camp. That's great. So we got, we're there. We're going to go in and take the camp. And then everyone bails on you. All the people that said, yeah, I'm in, I'm going to hold that camp, I'll be there, they bail on you. So like you get one of them maybe comes and helps you take it, but they're only going to be there a day or two. But then other people step up out the woodwork. So we pulled it off. We took the camp. We set up the tree houses, and we started in the tunnel the next day. But then it was really slow progress. That was in August 2020, and then it was really, really slow progress. We did make progress, but it was much slower than it should have been or could have been. So it wasn't really until Dan and a few others came and gave a bit more injection of energy and focus, because I was also doing a lot of media work and trying to organise different things. I got pulled away to a different protest camp against a Highbury eviction, the local housing project.
For the people listening, so at Euston, what was that defending? Was that HS2 or was that something else?
Yeah, so it's a part of the anti-HS2. Yeah, so I co-founded HS2 Rebellion as a way of trying to get Extinction Rebellion into action during COVID.
Do you want us to explain to the people who don't know what HS2 is and why it was so bad?
Yeah, so HS2 is a high-speed railway, and it's Europe's most destructive scheme. It's due to destroy 108 ancient woodlands, create, I can't remember the figures now, millions of tons of CO2. I think it's 5 million tons of CO2. This is by the government's own figures. It will not displace significant amounts of cars or planes, because even their own figures say 3 and 5% respectively. It was designed effectively as an ego trip, so that because we wanted to have the world's fastest train. It was like, well, we're a small nation, we don't need the world's fastest train. And it was a shuttle service to get people quickly between airports. That was the original concept back in the day, when it seemed like a good idea for the elite businessmen to be flying around the world. Well, those days have gone, and
They don't think so.
Well, even a lot of them, because of COVID and stuff, those business flight trips have definitely gone down compared with what they were looking like back in those days. Because the Zoom, after COVID, everyone uses Zoom. It's like so much more efficient to just have a Zoom meeting than face to face if you've got to travel through time zones to make that meeting happen. So it's not happening in the way it was. Everyone would, prior to that, we'll just jump on a plane and meet. But it's like, actually now we'll do a Zoom. So yeah, I come from a long line of railwaymen. My uncle, whose shoes I'm wearing, he died when I was in prison. He was on the railways all his life, absolute fanatic about trains. Because his dad went from like fireman to, well, he helped, he was like worked his way up to be a driver, and then he trained other drivers, and he helped the conversion from steam to diesel. That was his era. My great-grandfather and my great-great-grandfather all worked on the railways. So like I've got 4 generations of railwaymen behind me, and the masters that I did when I took a year out to live on the protest camps, I specialised in sustainable transport. I've always loved trains. All my summer holidays when I was a teenager, I went interrailing. I didn't go flying. I've always loved trains, and so for me, when I first heard about HS2, I thought, what are those tree huggers worrying about? You can't make an omelette without cracking eggs. We need trains, Don't worry, of course there's going to be a bit of damage. But then I looked into it. As soon as you scratch the surface of HS2, it unravels. It does not stack up. There is no legitimate case for HS2. It's a bogus scheme. As I said, it was an ego trip to try and have the world's fastest train, and it was as a shuttle service between airports. It's not, like they'll talk about, we need to expand capacity, blah, blah, blah. the best way to expand capacity is digital railway. You digitalise the signalling. We've got 19th century signalling, and as we digitalise it, you can treble capacity on the rail trains. If you extend some of the platforms, you can increase capacity. HS2 is totally bogus. It's, as I said, Europe's most destructive scheme. The most deforestation since World War One.
Can I just ask, so one thing I heard about HS2 is that to make one train line, or correct me if I'm wrong, they have to clear 2 football fields wide of land, of forest, to get all the work, all the machinery and all the things they need to do. Now, do you know if that's true or not? Like,
yeah, basically HS2, as I said, it makes no sense. The only way it makes sense now is as a land grab for the elite. So they've got unprecedented power for compulsory purchase. No one can quibble it. They can decide what land they need, and they don't just take. So first of all, it was designed as the world's fastest train. Never going to be that, but it's still got the impact as if it was. So it had to, if it was going to be the world's fastest train, it'd have to be super straight and super wide because of the speeds that are involved. But it's still got all of that. It's still got the massive steel and carbon impacts because of that, and cost. It's the most expensive train mile per mile that's ever been proposed in the world. The most expensive train.
I bet you some of the politicians who are pushing this through have like friends who shares in the companies and the contractors, and that money will be going straight into their pockets.
Yeah. So as I lived on these camps for a year and a half, we set up HS2 Rebellion. I got to meet all sorts of people, you know, and people that were doing some of that work and then also scratching the surface and going, hang on, this doesn't step up, and then feeling really bad with their conscience, and they would whistleblow, but they would do it like anonymously. So I heard all sorts of stories that were, you know, true. They would just come into me because they felt bad and they were seeing if we could do anything with that information, and they were saying things like the basically any, you know, when you're normally bidding for work, you know, you like have your calculations and you put your bid in. With HS2, they would just whack a load of extra on top, knowing that they could get away with it. That was standard. Everyone was doing that. It was, you know, they literally would, you know, it's a well-known thing within the trade. So it's the whole thing's so corrupt. You know, like you could talk about Euston, for example. Euston, where thousands of people were made homeless because of HS2, and thousands of businesses destroyed. You know. So it's really, really devastating scheme. You know, they'll blag it as, oh, it's creating jobs. It's you know, it's not. It's like losing loads of jobs. If we invested that money sensibly in renewables, in clean energy, in energy efficiency, we would create so many more jobs, and also do the work of genuinely investing in our railways. So. There's an independent study said, like, for 44 billion we could do all the work that's needed to make our railways fit for purpose. So the stuff I've just said, digital railways, extending railways, linking up the northern cities that aren't well served, all of that work could be done for 44 billion, whereas HS2 is going to cost hundreds of billions, you know, and not do that. It's already, and so one of the arguments in the early days was, oh, if we go for HS2, it'll take money away from the rest of the railway network. Oh no, it won't do that, they said. But it's doing it already, and it's been documented. It's already doing that. They're stripping away sensible, necessary parts of investment in our railways to feed HS2. And the materials that HS2 is gobbling up means other work, they just haven't got the materials because they're short, because HS2 is gobbling it all up. So HS2 is an absolute curse, absolute nightmare. So yeah, so Euston suffered most and first. Like, most of the evictions and homelessness has been created in Euston. Hundreds of people made homeless, and then Euston Square Gardens was left for the people in perpetuity. And HS2's plan was basically, there's a temporary taxi rank which not long before HS2 came along had already been built and destroyed half of Euston Square Gardens with a taxi rank. And so then they want to extend the station, and so they want to then the blag was, oh well, now we need the other half for a temporary taxi rank whilst we destroy that taxi rank to build the station. Bear in mind, by now Euston has already been cancelled. It's not like or postponed, you know. It's clear to me HS2 is never going to happen. It does not stack up financially. It does not stack up in terms of climate emissions and carbon emissions.
It's a black hole. It's a financial black hole.
Exactly. So it's not going to happen. So everything we're pouring into is just wasted energy, wasted emissions, wasted resources, wasted suffering. And Euston just illustrates that. You know, we defended those trees. We defended that park. It got a massive international story. You know, I did. If anyone's interested, I did a special podcast with Annie Mac while I was down there. I did a thing with Radio 4, Joe Unwin. It's called The Untold, I think. So you can maybe put the links on the podcast.
I'll put the links in the video description.
Quite a lot. We got loads of content out. Loads of, an article in the Sun, which was bullshit as the Sun always is. The journalist promised me the world. Oh yeah, I spent ages with him talking about the climate emergency, and he just is the usual sort of shit stitch up,
Takes out the random sentence and takes it out of context. And...
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, never mind. But it was a massive story. It was amazing. And so I lasted... there was 9 of us down there at the start. Oh, yeah, the way it went. So, yeah, we kind of... So half of the tunnel... Some of the tunnel was started from August through to December. But then really we cracked on January, February... Yeah, and then they came in February. So most of it, or at least half of it, was done in...
So how did they get you out of the tunnel then?
So these bailiffs, HS2 employ thugs, real thugs to evict people.
Do any of them try coming in and just dragging you out?
Yeah, that's how they got me out at the end.
Literally dragged you out?
Yeah, I thought I was going to die 4 times in the last hour that I was down there. I got a guy, I was being strangled twice. A guy threatened to put me out twice. I had an axe for digging, and when he grabbed my axe, he knocked me on the face. He sort of got a little scar with it or whatever. He did apologise for that. He didn't mean to do that. But, they had, honestly, twice I was being suffocated. They pulled my jacket over my head trying to pull me out. And I was literally thought I was going to die. It was suffocating. It was horrific, really, really bad. It was full on. But that was me at the end because I was on my own. How they got us out, well, different things. I mean, 3 people left voluntarily because there was 9 of us at the start, and that was a bit too many, really. So 3 people left. 1 person was ill, so she had to leave. They had to leave. Another person was had had enough. They were the 2 youngest ones left first. Fair enough. And then Laser. The plan with Laser was they would always leave again, just because Laser's this really big guy. But he navigated the tunnels so well. He was 37 hours down in the lock-on. It was just amazing, the endurance and stuff. And then when they finally cut Laser out the lock-on after 30 odd hours, 36 hours, whatever it was, Laser just retreated with the arm tube still intact.
Yeah.
So they cut the arm tube out the lock-on, but they hadn't cut the arm tube off. So they just retreated back into the tunnel and had another night, because they're exhausted from 36 hours. So they knew as soon as they took out, it'd be a police station and interview and all that. So they came out last night in the tunnel, had a nice rest and sleep, and then chose to leave at their own volition later on. So they all left of their own volition. And then, actually Scotty did as well. So Scotty was running low on supplies in the other tunnel. They ended up with 2 tunnels, and we couldn't communicate between them because they cut us off. Scotty.
How are you communicating?
They were all connected initially, and so we were all hanging out and moving between them. But then the bailiffs would basically drop these. They try how you should do it is you should replace the bailiffs should come through, and they should replace our shoring with their own shoring to make sure they're safe, and then take it a little bit at a time. You do half a body's length, get that safe, and then they move in. They can, because it's their own shoring and they know it's safe, then they can use that, and then they move in and do our own. And that's like a predictable thing. You know how long you've got and all the rest of it. What they were doing, they didn't know how to do that. They weren't just competent climbers, tunnelers, and so then what they started doing was dropping these down shafts on top of us in random places. They built I think 13, possibly more, down shafts, just random, some of them completely missed in random places.
So what they have, creating down shafts, and then what?
To try and cut the so you've got a length of tunnel.
Yeah.
So in a tunnel, basically you have a down shaft, then you have like wormholes or long bits, and then you have a chamber, which is a bigger area where you can sit up like this and you can, you know, sleep and eat and stuff. And so you'd have, you know, section of wormhole, section of chamber, section of wormhole, and then repeat, you know. And they would try and come down to separate sections of tunnel. So then instead of actually tunneling as they go, they would come and just like take that bit of tunnel.
Just like find this one, dig down on top of it, and break through the roof of the tunnel, and then like collapse that bit of the tunnel, so you can't get from one side to the other.
Not collapse it, but they would like enter it. You know, that's what they're aiming to do. But yeah, they should. So we had this independent expert that did a lot of the tunnels in the 90s, and obviously he was pissed off because he didn't get the contract for this one. He would have done it, he says, much safer, and you know. But it was good because you had the inside intel of how it should be done, and he would always drop a down shaft, I think at least 6 feet from the tunnel, and then slowly and carefully work your way to the tunnel, and then you're at the tunnel, and then you can take it. But they, you know, that's what they should have done. And I think they maybe kind of did like a bit of that once on one of their down shafts, but generally they were so shit. The down shafts would be coming. One time it was coming on top of a chamber, which really put us in danger because it was the first chamber I ever built, and it wasn't very good. It wasn't very secure. I didn't know how to shore properly. We had bolstered it up a bit, but you know they shouldn't be coming down on top of it. You know, so they did eventually back off and then come to the side of that. But it was so dangerous in the meantime, you know, they could have killed someone. They were really taking risks. Then they did another one where they came down right on top of the wormhole and like right on top of people, you know. Yeah, really, really bad, really dangerous. I mean, they did all sorts of things in that eviction, just outrageous. I mean, but that's what they'd been doing throughout the evictions and the tree evictions as well. I mean, my son came and joined me on one of the protest camps for HS2. And within half an hour of arriving on site, he free climbed up to the tree I was building a treehouse in and helped me finish the treehouse, and stayed in that the first night or two. And then he says, "Why is everyone just camping in the field when there was all those trees they're felling every day?" And it was because we'd already been evicted, and the camp was at a low ebb. But he kind of came in with loads of energy, and basically he's like, "I want to get in." So I helped him get in over the fence and occupy those trees, and he single-handedly stopped the felling of that whole wood for a week.
Wow.
You know, and that's what's so empowering. I mean, that was similar for me when we first were doing the M65 campaign. Me and my mate, who also took a year out of his degree, the two of us saved a whole wood for months because we just turned up. They didn't have security at that point. They just had a chainsaw crew, and every time the chainsaw guy would approach a tree, we'd put our leg in the way. And after 5 times of repeating that, he's like, "Well, I'm going home."
So speaking to someone who does HS2 as well, she told me that you can hammer big metal spikes into the base of the tree, so when they try and cut it, then you can break the chainsaws. You've been doing that kind of stuff?
Some people have done some of that, yeah. I mean, that was done a lot throughout the 90s, really. Yeah, I think you just got to be really careful with that. You know, there was a nasty injury in America in a chainsaw mill with that. A guy lost his arm, and that really set Earth First back a lot in the 90s. You know, I took a lot of work to kind of work with the tree worker community to sort of say, look, we want to work together. We don't want to be against you. You know.
I want to ask you one question. So, did you work a lot with Xavi?
Yeah. So. Let's did you finish the? Well, okay.
Sorry, I must have gone a bit of a tangent.
Yeah.
If you want to
go, I don't know, to be honest, like I don't. Yeah, let's talk about that another time.
Okay.
I need to I'm just. That's I'm still very much processing.
It's quite a deep thing. Well, we've been going for about 50 minutes now.
Yeah.
Is there anything else like you, Karen, you want to talk about?
Well, let's just finish the tunnel, shall we?
Yeah.
So that Euston Tunnel. It was amazing. We when they came in, like we'd built this pallet structure over and around the tunnel. There's some innovative sort of things we developed. So we took this with the tunnel. You get all this spoil. What you can do with all the spoil. So we built this pallet tower, and we filled the gap between the pallets with the spoil. And so you put really cheap, shitty boarding that you can skip anywhere in London. Screwed that onto the pallets, and suddenly you've got this form that you can ram the earth within, and that took all of the spoil, and it created a really massive, like, structure. So they couldn't bash it in. It was
quite a solid structure.
Yeah, really solid. So I know one of the most satisfying. Saying these things where things slip through your fingers, you don't quite pull it off. I think Euston Tunnel stands out for me as one of the times where the potential I saw, we did achieve it, because I saw the potential of a really big eviction where it got a lot of attention, and we achieved that, which was amazing. And then within that, a little one where we had really satisfying. That very first when we first started doing the tunnel, we had a really shonky little crappy thrown together structure around it, which then we expanded and built all the time. But that very first door that it had was really shitty, but I left it so it looked like it was still that door, and it looked really weak. So bailiffs, when they come in to evict, they'll always go for doors, and if they can't do doors, they'll do windows, right? So that's their mode. Doors and windows, that's the weak spots, that's where they'll come in. So I'd left this door as like a trap for them, bait. So but behind, I doubled up the pallets, so we got 2 thicknesses so it looked like a shitty door, really weak, but behind it was 2 thicknesses of pallet.
I love it.
And it was really satisfying. They're there with a sledgehammer, boom, boom, boom. They're just wasting their time and energy. And what was really helpful about it was, it's like, because you get so many false alarms when you're getting ready for eviction. It's like, okay, categorically, we are in an eviction scenario. They're trying to come in. It was really helpful. It's like, okay, this is go, guys. We've got to get down that tunnel. So that was really satisfying, the fact that they spent time and they gave us a really clear warning. I mean, we had people shouting eviction, but you don't know for sure. But when you heard that sledgehammer smashing like 2 feet away from you,
it's funny,
you know the eviction's
they're not going to get through that,
Yeah. Well, you never quite know, do you? But I was pretty confident in it. And we had a whole series of doors and stuff. And we had this really, really strong steel metal door. But the night of the eviction, before the eviction, someone hadn't quite shut it right. So it did take him a little bit of time to get through, but not that long. But anyway, and I hadn't, typically me last minute, I hadn't packed. So I'm there, they're coming in, and I'm just grabbing all my stuff, like it's all on my bed, because I was like getting ready to pack, but I hadn't packed. I was like, fuck. So I just grabbed all the tech and threw that in a bag down, and then random things. So I didn't have many of my clothes with me. I had hardly any clothes down there, because it's like, but it was a relief. It was actually a blessing, because you've got so little space down there. We had so much water, so much food, so much wood for expanding the tunnel. We were like, space was a nightmare. I spent so much time moving stuff around, trying to organise space. It's like, so it was actually really good. I didn't have enough time to pack all my stuff.
It sounds really exciting. I wish I'd been there.
Yeah, it was amazing. And we had, what was really great about it, we had 50 people help dig that tunnel, so therefore learn the skills. We had bucket lines, so because once you've got like an 80-foot tunnel, it's so much easier. You have a bucket line, you have people at the face, you pass it to a bucket, you pass it to people, someone else puts it at the bottom of the down shaft, ties it on, someone pulls it up, then you have another chain of people taking it out of Buckingham pallets and putting it in the walls and damping it in the walls. It's like, it was amazing, real community building, really, and great to share the skills and the enthusiasm of tunnels with people and the possibilities,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm really a bit gutted. Like, I really wanted to do that tunnel action. I was like so up for it. I was going to be the person like living in it. The
longest one now. So yeah, I guess it was before that one that we'd have done. Is it 40 odd days now? 47 days, I think. Ours was 27, and I think there's been a 47. But it got very little attention because it wasn't in London, So the most heroic thing, and they escaped.
I heard about this, actually.
They do, like, in that, because they were running low on food, and they're like, shit, we better get out of here. And they left on their own terms. It was so good. But just to finish that one, so I was down 27 days. It started off with 9 people, and then there was still another 4 went longer. I think 3, and the longest one at all was 31. So the last person out was 31 days. So that's how long that eviction lasted, 31 days for a tunnel, which shows you what's possible. And that's why I got into tunnels, was because tree houses, if you're lucky, it might last a week, or more likely a day. But a tunnel, if you're lucky, you can last a month or 2.
You said you were living in a tree in Parliament Square for a while. How long was that for?
That was 21 days. But if you want to wrap it up, we can talk about that next time.
We can do, yeah. Yeah, it's been a pleasure having you on.
Next time we'll talk about the tunnels that we were doing and where they fit into that, and yeah, Parliament Square, and then like some other stuff that's come since.
Yeah, so make sure you watch out for the next episode with Larch here. I think we're going to round up. So if you've watched this all the way to the end, then please do make sure that you're subscribed to the video, like and drop a comment, because we are a very small channel at the minute. We've got 99 subscribers, and it does mean a lot to us. So if you help share this with your friends and family, it means quite a lot. If you want to support us financially, we're looking to get some new recording equipment instead of using just phones. We've got a Patreon that's linked in the description as well, and yeah, thank you for watching this long. Any last words?
Yeah, thanks for watching this long. Hopefully, if you've watched this long, you're already probably somewhat involved. And I think the key thing is pathways to action. So please, if you're watching this, find some civil resistance, civil disobedience group near you and get involved. You can't do this on your own. We've got to do it together. Reach out. So in the UK at the moment, it's Just Stop Oil. There's something called the A22 network, which is around the world, equivalent of Just Stop Oil in the UK. In Germany, it's Letzte Generation. In Canada, it's different, Just Stop Oil Growth, or a new one that's forming. In America, it's Declare Emergency. In Australia, Fireproof Australia, or other ones that are forming. So around the world, there are different organisations. Check out the A22 network. You can find it off the Just Stop Oil website. Just scroll down to the bottom and you've got the A22 network. Get involved. And if there isn't a A22 network organisation in your country, in your area, start one. You just need one other. Find someone else that also cares about this stuff like you do. Two of you together, you can start something. Reach out to us with Just Stop Oil. We want to support. We'll do whatever we can to help you get going. And there's a whole A22 network of support to get you going in your area.
And also, if you message on messages on Twitter or drop a comment and you want to come be a guest on the show and you're from another country and you're in civil resistance, you're welcome to. I'll be glad to hear from you.
Brilliant.
Thank you and goodbye.
We are the tongue that speaks the truth. We are the song upon the wind. We are the courage to stand forth. We are the change that now begins. On this good green earth, we will take a stand with an open heart and a healing hand. With an open heart and a healing hand.